I declare a Concacaf emergency.
What article are you invoking to do that?
Article 27.
Emergency podcast. Betty did a thing, so we gotta talk about it. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency. Emergency podcast. Shut up, hell yeah, shut up, hell yeah, shut up. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency.
Hey, a hearty hello to you all, and welcome to Emergency Podcast, the Austin FC podcast, where we talk about all the Austin FC emergencies and the World Cup emergencies. We have a lot to talk about that we're going to try to compress into a really tight recording here on Tuesday morning. Dani Pereira is now a Montreal player. Shemi has arrived, Przemysław Płacheta. And then, of course, if you've been watching World Cup action, Canada is out, Mexico is out, and now, as of last night, the United States is out. Lots to talk about. Moisés, how are you? And how did you feel about our boys crashing out of the World Cup? 4-1 to Belgium. Disastrous performance.
Disastrous performance. I really appreciated seeing Brad Stuver posting about these guys are not robots, effectively asserting that these people are expected to recover in 30 seconds from the incredible psychological hit of, for example, the disastrously let in Matt Freese goal, which people could, I think, very rightly share some of the blame to Tim Ream, but Matt Freese is definitely not blameless. He's not blameless for any of the goals that got let in. What I would want to focus on, and I've said this on the show multiple times, that I am a diehard supporter of the U.S. women's national team. That has not always been the case for the U.S. men's national team. I have felt not close to the project in a variety of ways, whether that's people defining what does and does make somebody American and does not make it allowed for someone to be seen as American, which those conversations happen on the schoolyards, in the hallways, in the quads of universities, much more regarding the men's national team, who have never won a title, an international title that is, as compared to the 4-starred women's national team. The performance from this World Cup up until now got me on board real fast, real early, because I saw the benefits of what Mauricio Pochettino had managed to do in not a cycle, but half of a cycle, where he was inheriting guys who assumed their places were completely assured and safe, guys who had various different complexes about where they were in the pecking order, guys who were fighting for their spot, and guys who were getting used to their new coach and a new sporting vibe to figure out how they would win their spot. I wasn't as high on Mauricio Pochettino before I watched it as I was after I watched the U.S. Against the World documentary on HBO, which I recommend people give a look at if you want a more human, more nuanced, deeper look at these players than you get from credit card commercials and post-game press conferences and that sort of thing. Like, I'll flat out say the performance last night was terrible. I think it is also terrible and a disservice to those players who a lot of people were very on board with, to go fair weather with them and say, burn it all down, fire the coach immediately, start over from scratch. This idea of giving a coach 2 cycles and it's a bad idea. This guy didn't get 1 cycle. I think it's completely insane, especially for national level pundits who know better, that I saw across social media, that I've heard in my podcast feeds, that are already calling for the head of Mauricio Pochettino, proclaiming that the experiment did not work, abandon ship, scuttle the ship, destroy everything and start over from scratch. To me, that is the biggest, dumbest tradition that we have continued to hew to for the U.S. men's national team.
This is not on him.
No. This
Absolutely not.
I mean, the other crazy thing to me is people acting like the Trump influence on this, and we're talking about politics. I can't help it. I can't help it. We can't help it. I think it's absurd to try to enforce the bizarre dystopian bubble that those of us living in the United States are in on soccer analysis for something that people are saying, well, it shouldn't have affected the players. The players are soft. This assertion that the players are soft, leave that to Alexi Lawless and the washed pieces of garbage from men's teams past to bring up as something just heaping the dirt on the grave with these guys. It is impossible to divorce the effect that not only being effectively claimed as these are Trump's boys, because look at what God Emperor Trump did for them by delivering Folarin Balogun to them, and they should be grateful. And the president himself saying, well, if we lose, we'll just say that it was rigged. I love talking about how it's rigged, trotting out all of his same dumb, stupid lines. But you equally cannot dismiss the idea of lightning rod style uniting the world against the team, not having a deleterious effect on these players.
Right.
How dare you? How dare anyone come for my players? And I am a guy who was like, at the beginning of the tournament, I don't know if these guys are my players. I don't know if these guys are my team. I'm going to go root for somebody else. I've done it many times before. I'm sorry. You do not, well, with the exception of Christian Pulisic, you do not come for my guys.
Wow.
Christian Pulisic, who kicked himself and took him out of the game. The catastrophizing is something that, to be empathetic for the people making these wild assertions, kill everybody off with their heads, said the Queen of Hearts. I get what it's been like to be an American for over 6 years now, with what we've been dealing with as being the center of the focus of the world in all the worst ways. I get that, and I get that it is easy to fall into the language of revolution. We'll figure out how we run everything after we burn everything down and take everything over. Somebody else will deal with that. Who needs bureaucracy? We'll figure out what bureaucracy we're going to put in place later. It's the same logic that I'm already hearing about, well, the foreign coach didn't work out, either in direct language or in dog whistle language of, well, what we really need is an American. We need a real American hero, a real G.I. Joe of soccer, like B.J. Callahan. And I love B.J. Callahan. I think he will be a great future, fully enshrined, full-time men's national team coach. Totally believe that, but he's a little bit busy winning a title or two or three, who knows, with Nashville right now.
True.
And I do not think throwing out the bathwater and as many babies as will fit makes the most sense here. I think that is a panic button shaped like, well, I said it 2 years ago, Mauricio Pochettino was not going to work. Well, I hate the Spurs, so therefore I hate Mauricio Pochettino. I hate Spurs. They were such a great enemy to me when he was their coach. Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because of my club biases.
But he was also relevant.
They
were relevant when
yeah.
He was a player in that. Yeah. So I have a few thoughts here too. So to jump in. Yeah. So in 2017, you might recall, I wrote a little book called I Believe That We Will Win.
It's available right now from various booksellers. Go to bookshop.org and you too can shop from a local independent bookshop that has it in stock.
And get a book that is now 8 years old when it published. So, of course, when it published in 2018.
It's still a great book. Still a great book.
The U.S., thank you. The U.S. did not play in that World Cup, of course, because they did not qualify. They auto-qualified for this one. So I projected at that point that they, with this golden generation, would not necessarily win a World Cup, but thought they could perhaps at least get to the semifinals. And going into the tournament, that to me seemed a little preposterous. I thought, okay, round of 16 exit is probably where they're headed. But as they played throughout this tournament, I really began to believe in what Pochettino had done. I really believed in what the players were doing. In retrospect, yeah, maybe they weren't the best opponents that they were racking up wins against, but they were looking really impressive. And then all of a sudden, you have the Matt Freeze performance, you have the Tim Ream performance, you have the Sergiño Dest performance, you have the Christian Pulisic performance, and that all adds up to just not being good enough on the world stage against the team that is also looking shaky, but has a lot of talent. And again, that at this stage of the tournament with the opponents that you're going to face, they were going to face Spain after that. They were theoretically going to face France after that if they got past Spain. You have to put together really comprehensive 90-minute performances in order to be able to beat those teams because, quite frankly, there are still talent gaps between what those top European teams have and what the United States has.
Just one thing I was going to throw in there. You said they would have faced France. And as much of a France supporter as you are, as I am, That isn't entirely certain just yet. They still have to get past Morocco. The only thing I want to note here is this is still an ongoing tournament that we have seen plenty of surprises from, and that I think we still could. Like, there are still two African teams that could make an entire continent a debutante first-time world champion.
Sure.
So there are possibilities for not what people expect, not what the conventional wisdom dictates and demands, and that kind of goes to what I think you're saying here, which is there was a change of expectations when it comes to just possibilities, not likelihood, but possibilities that opened up that it sounds like you did not think those doors were open when the tournament started.
Right. Yeah. And I will grant that France-Morocco is a final and the quarterfinal. Absolutely. I mean, Morocco looked fantastic against Canada, for instance. So, I mean, obviously the U.S. still has work to do, right? So when you have the Mats in goal and you saw the result of what happens, something needed to happen. It would have been maybe a little surprising and not what you would expect to have Brad Stuver called into camp late, but I would have liked to have seen Brad Stuver in that Belgium game, for instance, instead of what Matt Freese did. I don't think he would have gone Keystone Cops on a clearance the way that he did to put a giant nail in the U.S.'s coffin for that particular match in the second half. So I don't know. I'm a little flummoxed right now, but the thoughts that Pochettino should not stay, I think is ridiculous. Pochettino might go of his own volition, and I completely understand wanting to do that. And you had brought up the Trump thing too. And I mean, again, I'm kind of loath to talk politics in this, but this harkens back to just last month, Game 3 of the NBA Finals. Trump inserted himself into the Knicks Spurs narrative, and that was the only game that the Knicks lost. That clearly, as a Spurs fan, as a San Antonio Spurs fan, I should qualify, it pained me greatly to see the Knicks win in the fashion that they did, because the Spurs were just falling apart game after game very late in those games. But it very clearly became the Knicks narrative, and as soon as the most powerful man in the world inserted himself into the narrative and made sure that he was at that game where he then napped, it is distracting. You can't discount it. You can't say, oh, it doesn't matter to the players. The players are, like we were saying, autonomous. They are ready to just go at a moment's notice, and nothing in the outside world affects them. Absolutely not. The vitriol against the U.S. for what happened there was something that was avoidable. And again, I thought it was just. I mean, I thought Balogun's foul was a yellow card foul. Yeah. I think the way that VAR was brought into that was not in accordance with the rules. I think there should be automatic reviews of red cards in the World Cup. There should be a process in place. If a team wants to appeal, they should be able to insert themselves in the process within a defined window. Just invoke Article 27 to let Balogun play or let Ciron play, right? Yeah. So, because that also happened with him earlier in the tournament. I mean, it's understandable, ratings, money, why you would do that sort of thing, but at least have a process, have a system if you need to have a process or a system, because clearly this shows you need to have that. These mistakes get made. They could be rectified. They should be rectified, but have a process and have it defined. Don't just make it up on the fly.
And in wading through the various tides of catastrophization last night, I found a clip from CBS's Mike Grella, enemy to all Australians, where I feel he said it flatly. He said it best. If you just say the red card was overturned, none of this narrative happens exactly the way that it did. Would Trump have still inserted himself? Probably, sure. But FIFA shot themselves in every foot that they could possibly find by allowing for the narrative to take hold. And it's something that, as Americans, we have seen countless times.
Unless, perversely, they want this.
Yeah. And on the thing about Cristiano Ronaldo, another thing that I saw in looking through different things last night, another reel that I saw on Instagram from Trevor Noah, where he had a guest on who was talking about, here's the thing about FIFA, 2013. This isn't the first time that they have shown preferential treatment to this human pile of garbage. My words, not his. But what this guest brought up was that in 2013, there was a strict cutoff for Ballon d'Or voting. And FIFA mysteriously, retroactively extended that deadline, allowing people to revise their ballots.
Oh God!
As soon as Ronaldo scored some more goals. And
who won that year?
And who won that year?
Let me guess.
I don't want to say the name. But I bring this up I bring this up because on a dark day, at the very least, I saw the end of Portugal's totemic player's career happen in the most boring game, in which he was basically not on the field and in which he missed the crucial final play that would have saved the match and sent it into extra time. And then when Telemundo started the live stream of the U.S.-Belgium match early, doing a preview, it opened to him crying. And I'm not convinced he has human emotions, but I love seeing that man miserable. So maybe a silver lining to a dark day.
It is that set of human emotions.
Yeah, but I bring this up because when you look at FIFA's own statement released yesterday about the decisions that were made and everything, Folarin Balogun was given a $40,000 fine, half of which payable by U.S. Soccer, the other $20,000 of which is on the player to pay for two separate infractions. One of them was the red card suspension itself, which, as we've discussed, should have been overturned. And the other reason is because he came back to the pitch to celebrate the win with his teammates. And I'm glad that there is some more sunlight happening on some absolutely absurd stuff going on. Jurgen Klopp is already calling for Gianni Infantino's resignation. I think more people are going to call for Infantino's resignation. I wonder who they would get after an Infantino, but I don't care. It's past the point that the issuer of the first ever FIFA Peace Prize, his time needs to be done. In the same way that Barron Trump is the worst Arsenal supporter, Gianni Infantino is the worst Inter Milan fan, and I would love it if both of them chose other club affiliations, but I don't have that kind of control. But I can control them having a lousy time, or wishing that they have a lousy time, that is. My first name isn't Luigi, and I'm not from New York. This whole thing, the bizarre reality distortion field that Americans have been in for so long, makes it so easy for people to chalk this up to might as well just throw it all out. And I just do not see that. I do not see that. I think it's unfair to the players who have ignited more interest in soccer. It's not just the tournament being here, but a lot of people have been enthused and overjoyed in watching these players.
Right.
Admittedly, not so much last night.
It's just that so many eyes were now on this particular game. But this is not Netherlands crashing out in the round of 32 to Morocco, which again could, as we talked about, could be in the finals. I still think we are moving towards France-Argentina. I was delighted that I was almost wrong in half of the equation with Cabo Verde and the performance they had against Argentina, which has been one of the great joys of this tournament. The World Cup gives us these Cabo Verde stories, right? So it gives us the Curacao story. So where you had Eli Room shutting down Ecuador, and then he's given up 3 in the Pittsburgh Riverhounds game now that he's back.
There's so much to be taken from this tournament. And as we record this, the Egypt-Argentina game hasn't kicked off, and it is possible that in both cases, an African team could knock out the finalists from last World Cup.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if that Egypt-Argentina game goes at least to extra time.
I'm right on board with you. I see that going to extra time, or there could be an absolutely brutal at the death winning goal from Egypt that shocks the world. That would be the new surprise of the tournament. Is
not
Argentina
that you were actively
goes
hoping for that?
I'm actively hoping for it. Look, if Flo Balogun, who I think was still a potential contender for a golden boot if the U.S. had kept going, to see Messi's golden boot race end early sure wouldn't disappoint me. He's gotten his flowers. He's gotten his win. If there are people who are considering tapping out of the tournament now because the U.S. is out, I would encourage you to reconsider that. I think there are still some really fascinating narratives that could take hold, even if France gets past Morocco, even if Argentina gets past Egypt. Naturally, my hope is that Switzerland does not win, because I would like that half of the bracket to not have any European teams in it, since our side of the bracket is full of European teams.
We are getting a lot of European teams here in this quarterfinals. Who knows how this would have changed if Senegal had managed to hold on to that lead against Belgium for 5 more minutes. Was that? Now, it was absolutely heartbreaking to see.
Transition.
Hey, just jumping in to interject here on Tuesday evening now that we know the results of those 2 matches from Tuesday. And Egypt almost did what we said they were going to do. Argentina appears to have had a little bit of wind behind their backs. At the end, wind called the refs, and it was 2-0 Egypt, of course, and ended up 3-2 Argentina. That was a very, very strange ending. And then, of course, Switzerland, Colombia, no scoring through 120 minutes. And then Switzerland proceeds to win it in PKs. So we have another boring UEFA team in the quarterfinals, which is not what I was hoping for. Argentina, Colombia would have been a lot more fun. Seeing Argentina bounced from the tournament in the round of 16 would have been a lot more fun. But instead, now we have kind of what we expected, and Switzerland.
Transition.
Before we go over to Austin FC, because we do have some Austin FC things to talk about now, finally, again, not necessarily all welcome news, but certainly worth talking about. Just wanted to pour one out for Canada and Mexico at this point as well. The other Concacaf warriors who are no longer with us in the tournament. Canada, I'm not entirely surprised. Again, Morocco, as we've said, really tough opponent, looking solid. Canada just had too many injuries to deal with, including, of course, the leg break to Ismail Kone during that game against Qatar, that 6-0 win. So again, Alphonso Davies couldn't be activated. Manuel Veth was in the middle of the game saying, well, I don't think Alphonso Davies would make a difference in this. He would have made all the difference in the world. That is exactly what they needed in that match.
What a moron. I'm just going to straight up call Manuel Veth a moron. That's absurd.
Yeah, it was a really terrible take.
Phil, you did miss a signature injury, and it's the one in Jesse Marsh's brain that resulted in him not starting Jaden Nelson. I set it up as a joke, but I'm serious. You're playing in Houston. You have a player on your roster who actively plays on a Texas team, who has been playing club soccer in this climate.
Right.
And you bring him on and give him 10 minutes to literally pull the entire team's ass out of the fire.
Yeah, at least put him on at the hour mark. I mean, you've given up a goal at that point. It's clear that you need energy. It's clear that you need subs. It's clear that you need to change the direction of that. And yeah, I looked on with Estevezian helplessness watching this late game sub not happen. It's just really distressing. By the way, shout out to Nico for landing a job with the Chicago Fire. Yeah. That's gonna be wonderful for him. But yeah, so Canada just plagued by too many injuries. I think Marsh made some really terrible decisions in that Morocco match, but also that was just inevitably, I think, where it was going to land. But certainly a good showing from them. Mexico, though, to see England win in the way they did, very, very surprising. And again, just cannot get over that round of 16 hump. And even though it looked like it was setting up absolutely for that to happen in this tournament, the way that they were playing up to that point. I mean, again, round of 16 seems to be this kind of like barrier wall for CONCACAF teams.
And not to dismiss the notion of superstition. Superstition's important. I was lighting candles. I was doing the whole thing. I was pulling big time for Mexico. Very honestly, I was pulling for all three host nations. I have deep, deep love for all three of them and wanted them all to go further. It was interesting to me that the way that I diagnose Mexico's losing match against England is a similar, why did you make those decisions aimed at the coach kind of thing, where I don't blame Pochettino nearly as much on the U.S. side of things. Mexico and Canada had bizarre and different kinds of tactical decisions made where Mexico was on the front foot in so many ways, and then they sub out Quiñones. They sub out Mora. They suddenly are set up and are only able to cross to nowhere and not threaten the opponent's box the way that they had been the entire match. And that just baffled me. It felt like it was making strategic subs, hedging that extra time was a foregone conclusion. And this is when they need which fresh legs where, rather than letting them go past the point of exhaustion as we had seen them previously in the tournament and thrill everybody. I think that was the big tactical mistake. But I don't want to play armchair coach. I'm not going to also make myself accountable for the fact that hindsight's 2020. I think there's a good reason for Mexico fans to be as continually hopeful as it seems that people have been since the loss, from what I'm seeing on social media, what I'm seeing in fan chats. There's a lot of love for those guys and a lot of love for what people see as progress toward more upward momentum. And for me, I think it was a really solid tournament to say farewell to Memo Ochoa. And having him on the roster was in no way a tactical liability. I think, honestly, giving him those minutes at the end of a match that was not going to in any way endanger Mexico's tournament and activating and energizing the entire Mexico fan base like that, that was brilliant coaching. That was, you bring in a guy who is definitely past his prime, who, quote unquote, shouldn't necessarily be on the roster if you're looking at things in numbers and averages and all that kind of stuff. But Mexico is big on emotion. Mexico is big on certain kinds of nostalgia. And that, I think, was, of the various old men of soccer who were in this tournament.
Right.
I think that's one of the better moves, along with Lukaku, actually. Like,
yeah,
Lukaku has turned out to be pretty important, either in making something happen or slamming the door decisively shut. And
yeah, he may not be able to go full 90, but he's a terrifying player to throw on at 70. And his goal certainly showed that, he still has it. All right. Any other quick World Cup things we need to say, except for, of course, Paraguay? I was really enraged by what they did against France. I was really enraged that there were no yellow cards issued to them throughout that entire match, when there were clearly not only yellow card offenses, but red card offenses in that match. And do not come after my large adult son, Kylian Mbappe, like that. Although I thought that Mbappe handled himself brilliantly throughout that match and afterwards.
I feel that I have a sixth sense for racial abuse is coming, and I felt that spider sense tingling. And then based on some of the
top of everything else they were doing.
On top of everything else they were doing. And I very clearly saw the facial reactions that I'm used to seeing from black players on Mbappe and on Dembele. There was some disgusting stuff being said to those guys. And that's not uncommon for teams with black players playing Paraguay. Following the match, a Paraguayan senator decided to make some absurdly racist comments about Mbappe.
That was that was terrible.
Which I give him all the respect in the world for the poise and composure that he took in decisively, lethally responding to this horrendous racist who should never hold public office in any country in the world. I've said before, it would be awesome if a non-European country won. It'd be awesome if a debutante team or a first-time winner won the whole tournament. I would be totally fine with France winning and adding a third star, because they are showing themselves to be the super connected, absolutely on one team of the tournament with no real missteps. So I will make that exception, Phil. I'll put that out there. That will be my Article 27. I can do whatever I want and contradict myself however I want. My hope is that the hot light of day being on this tournament right now, I would love to see serious investigation over a soccer tournament do the inverse of what Donald Trump has done to our country and to the world for over 6 years now. And that is flooding the zone with distraction. Distract from his ability to distract people. Focus the world's eye on the corruption that's happening inside of FIFA, outside of FIFA, and the thumbs that are on the scales. I would love nothing more than for him to not be able to escape the spotlight of justice in some way or another for however long he's got left, because he doesn't seem to stay awake that much these days. Austin FC. We still cover Austin FC on this podcast called Verde All Day. Phil?
We do. Yeah, so Dani Pereira, of course, has moved over to CF Montreal for a bunch of GAM. We had the rumors earlier. Those kind of got dismissed when things got quiet. And then out of the blue last week, we get this news that it is official, that the trade has happened. It is over $2 million in GAM. And again, this surprised me on several levels. It doesn't necessarily surprise me that Dani Pereira is no longer in Jim Curtin's plans, but it does surprise me, first of all, that just this move is capable of being made without a sporting director. So I wonder, is this something that Montreal initiated? And Austin FC found enough people in the club to be receptive to it. Certainly, Jim Curtin signed off on it. So this maybe gives us some clues as to what he wants to do with the formation, with the players that he has. It does clear things up in terms of the midfield questions about the overlap between Dani Pereira and Owen Wolff, but it also makes the midfield considerably thinner. Do you have any kind of initial reactions, thoughts to it?
A few things. This is a thing that surprised me but didn't shock me. The initial report coming from a source that was immediately dismissed by various people as, well, this guy doesn't believe that we landed on the moon, and also he got fired from an MLS commentator job. Neither of those things change the fact that because of who he is and because of the relationships that he has and how small of a world the soccer world is inside of Montreal, there is no reason he would have to just pull this out of nowhere if somebody didn't feed it to him. So I gave it some credibility initially, I think more than various people did. But at the same time, I put out the heavy proviso of, but it could absolutely be nothing. And also teams angle like this, agents angle like this to try to move things along or try to get a better deal from somebody else. So it could have been that there were open conversations between these two clubs, but there was another interested club and they were trying to bid up that club on the buy price. When it comes down to how this originated, I take at face value what is mentioned in the press release, quoted and attributed to Davy Arnaud, that this process went back to the beginning of the year. This went back to presumably the winter window.
Okay.
And was something that the way that it was framed, I'm given to believe it is similar to actually the Diego Fagundes trade, which I think the club could have messaged a bit better on. I think they would admit that as well.
Right.
That was a potential move in place prior to Roto Borrell coming to the club that he took over the line. He did not mastermind it, but in one of, I think, the various cases where he had an easy layup that was treated like a three-pointer from the other end of the court, he prevented catastrophic roster ruin by making the clearest and easiest move that he could have with an intra-league trade. And I think that there's a similar situation here where, on the one hand, I want to say I think that this is a good thing for Danny's career long-term if the aim is to go onward and upward with value, with salary, with having plans built around him rather than, well, also he is part of the plans, which he was an important part of the Austin lineup. No doubt whatsoever. Quality player, solid player. But at the point that the club has progressed to, you stay in one place for too long, things aren't being built around you. You're not defining the play. Other pieces are not locked in to work with you, as well as when you go somewhere new and get to stand out. And are getting a GAM number that is second only to Leo Campana in this league. Leo Campana, like, to me, better than
it's not necessarily worked out for the GAM that they spent.
But
however,
but to me, the key thing is, this is not them offloading him or getting rid of him for secondhand DVD pricing. This is a player who is seen to have value that another team in rebuild mode sees as, we're going to rebuild around this, rather than he is here, he's been here for 5 years, and okay, here's how he'll fit into the way that restructuring everything else in and around him.
Yeah, I just wonder, he's going to, again, a team that is probably going to miss the playoffs with an interim head coach. And so he's leaving one shaky situation for another. I just wonder kind of long-term how that's going to work. I mean, Montreal's lovely. I think his family is going to stay here is what we've been hearing, given just kind of the political weirdness and all that. Being in Canada is not necessarily a bad place for him to be right now. But also, I wonder developmentally, that does obviously hold him to MLS for his career. I figured that's where that was going to go. I think that another move is in the offing. I don't necessarily think that he is going to retire a impact player or a former impact player, as it were, but I could see him moving on to an LAFC or something like that eventually. But just, just kind of curious if this...
That'd break my heart.
Yeah, but I could see it. I just wonder at this phase of his career, what this is going to do developmentally, how this is going to help him. I'm curious to see it play out, obviously, still invested in seeing how he plays, how he develops, how he grows, because that is something that we've been seeing for quite a while. From before the team had its first match, Dani Pereira was part of those plans. He was the surprise number one super draft pick. Thought that was going to go in a different direction, but turns out to have been a pretty wise move that they made. Certainly better than the projected number one that particular season. So yeah, I mean, of course, best wishes to him, and the foundation is still active. Itutukes. So that is something that if you want to show some support and love to Dani, that is a thing that you can potentially investigate.
Yeah.
Anything else on Dani before we move to...
If anybody isn't familiar with what his foundation, Adostokes, is focused on, it's about making soccer within reach of kids who do not have the finances, the connections, the Nepo perks that make things in the pay-to-play US-based system work. Bringing soccer within reach, something that is deeply important to me and that I believe with every fiber of my being, is that football is a sport for poor kids. It is something that you should be able to play in a bare lot with a half-deflated ball just with your 2 feet. And I think that the barriers to entry that have been created by the invasion of sovereign wealth funds, venture capital, has not just tried to turn football into globally a gentleman's game in the English sense, but something that you have to have connections to be able to get what, when figure skating is your ice time, what gets you entree into academies that are going to translate to you being brought into the right system, rather than opening the frontiers of soccer to more kids. It has been actively closing them off and making it more of a miracle that, say, an Irvin Torres ends up in an Austin FC. But they do good work. They're smart, sharp, scrappy Venezolanos. And I love what the Pereira family has brought to Austin as a soccer city, Austin as a soccer community. And I'm glad that they are going to continue that work. And yeah, I think this move to Montreal, considering everything that he has experienced while he's been at Austin, going through a crazy U.S. soccer scandal involving their first sporting director, the dismissal of a first coach, the dismissal of a sporting director and second coach, conflict that I've gotten more and more primary sources about exactly what was really going on with those game plans, where as a player, you're only so aware of those until suddenly you get a team sheet the day before game day that completely flies in the face of what you've been doing all week. I think that a lot of those experiences have been incredibly instructive, and I think there are very bright future moments across Dani's career coming. So best of luck to him.
Yeah. And speaking of surprises from Rodolfo Borrell,
Przemysław
Płacheta is now an Austin FC player officially. We had our sources, we had our suspicions that this was going to come across, and indeed it did. So again, he is a Polish international winger, can also play some wingback, can also play in the midfield, was with Oxford United, has logged some brief Premier League time with Norwich City, reportedly very speedy, reportedly also maybe not the most decisive of players, and all of a sudden he is in the mix. Another winger in a Jim Curtin system that may not necessarily deploy wingers. So curious to see how that will all shake out. But again, that was our understanding based on what was in the press release and based on what we'd heard before, is that it was a pre-contract, so signed back in March. So he was coming unless he decided all of a sudden, no, I don't want to hang out in the United States, where he is already deemed that it is warm in this getting off fairly lightly summer 2026 that we are having here weather-wise. So that worries me a little bit, and did not actually see him get any run out in from the scant photographic evidence we had of the 1-0 loss to Querétaro on Friday to start the midseason friendlies. But in camp, he is here, he is working, he is active, and theoretically could see him on the field as early as, if you don't count the July 18th open practice that's going to be happening on July 22nd against Seattle to reopen things after the World Cup is done and France has lifted its third trophy.
Przemysław Płacheta.
We've been practicing.
Yeah, no, I have a Polish friend who I traveled North America weekend after weekend, seeing frequently on the comic convention circuit. And she gave me some tips when I was like, let me ask you how this is pronounced, because I have no idea, because I've never really looked into Polish pronunciation. And I was like,
consulted the internet, but
I was like, well, I never would have guessed.
Right.
Yeah, there was some taint here. It's big episode of tainted things, of this being a leftover from the Roto era of things. The things that I think I would point to in terms of not dismissing this out of hand as what is he actually out of the system and everything. When his team he left on a free found out that he was doing medicals, they immediately tried to tank him reputationally, which is tough for any player to deal with. I think give the guy a shot. I stand by the fact that, forget about the business side of it, but just on the human level, if Robert Taylor had not been so serially injured, what we saw from him in his first run out, that's the kind of player that we wanted to see come in like a bat out of hell, trying to do anything to boost the team play of the team. Hindsight being 2020, things did not work out, obviously. I think that it's entirely reasonable to be critical of a player. But Phil, I don't think it's reasonable for people to be going, when is this Płacheta guy going to start scoring goals? He hasn't scored a single goal. He's not completing any of his passes, this guy. He literally just got here. Give him a chance to fail before you immediately assume that it's a failure. Give the guy an opportunity to surprise you. Show him the love coming in that makes players want to come to this club.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's worth a fair shake.
Okay. Yeah. We'll see how he does. We'll see, first of all, how he shapes up in Davy Arnaud's system. And again, curious to know how Arnaud's system is going to actually implement Curtin system things. And then, of course, obviously, once Curtin does come in for the pause between this 2026 season, which I think a lot of people already want to see done, and the 27 sprint season, that will, again, I think, be interesting just to kind of see, first of all, kind of where he fits into the plans, and then in the larger macro view, what those plans are. Because obviously, with this kind of double change that we have, Dani was an integral part of the midfield. Certainly, a lot of the work that he was doing was pretty central to the way that Austin was playing. And then Chemi was seen maybe as kind of this ancillary player. Obviously, Taylor going out and Chemi going in. It is pretty much a like winger for winger sub, although yeah, I do think that Chemi, based on kind of what we know, is a little bit more versatile, right? So can play some different positions. Again, that was something that Roto prized. That was something that Esteves prized. So we'll see where, once we get to talk to Kurt a little more, find out where he is philosophically with that. Because I mean, again, he is inheriting a lot of those kind of players, and just seeing how the roster is going to be remade with the sudden infusion of $2 million in GAM. Plus, there's also more GAM that's come over with the international slot that has gone back to RSL for the rest of the season. So definitely building up the coffers there, which I think is interesting, which I think is good, but it's just a matter of, okay, how do you then spend that? And again, that was something that, looking at Burrell in retrospect, did he spend that GAM that he had inherited and had, in some cases, acquired Claude? How did he turn around and employ that? And was that, again, the best possible use of GAM? The jury's kind of still out. Getting Rosales here, getting Nelson here, I think good ideas, but just kind of curious to see, with this changing of the guard with Curtin, how that's all going to shake out. Because I don't know that they were necessarily players that he would have chosen, but certainly something that I think that seeing what he'll do with the chopped basket, I think is going to be interesting.
Yeah. I wish I could credit the fan who I saw put in one of the chats a meme of indicating that Roto spends a bunch of GAM on Robert Taylor, and then his bike falls over because he's out of GAM, aka energy to pedal, and he's baffled at where all of his GAM went. Where did the chain on my bike go?
Right.
You gave it so that Robert Taylor could ride his bike. So that's where the GAM went, Roto. Something on this note that I think bridges into a story I want to get into is Jorge Alastaway has been actively training with the first team and not playing with the second team, still lacks a first team contract, would require an international slot to play with the first team. We've posited do they bring him up on a supplemental contract and use an international roster slot on a supplemental? Is he potentially that good? I believe he very well could be. The quality I've seen with him playing on the second team, we need to see midfield strength from this team. We need to see people who are willing to run in the system that Jim Curtin likes running.
Mm-hmm.
And that describes Jorge Lastaway in so many different ways on paper. We'll see how it works out when he's not dealing with a super weird environment like he did when he got his first MLS minutes and missed a sitter. Was that an outlier, or was that cracking under the pressure? I've gotten no impression from him that really is an indication of him continually cracking under the pressure. I think it was an unfortunate first time out outlier. And I think that if we see a supplemental plus international slot signing, even if they let him go at the end of the season, who knows? I refuse to lean into the consider the season lost, punt on the season, let the ashes start to feed into re-sowing the field. But I think you've got to be willing to try interesting things with who is here right now.
Yeah.
There's, in so many ways, nowhere to go but up. And you've got to believe in the opportunity for these players, even Besard Sabovic. I'll even posit that. Because last season, I was saying this about Mirto Uzuni. I was like, I would love nothing more than to see a big turnaround from Mirto Uzuni. And I think that we very much have gotten that this season, regardless of whether that translates to what his longevity with the club is. I'm not placing a bet on that. I'm not placing bets on anything. I hate sports betting. Nothing would make me happier than after the sporting director who sat him down and called him the worst signing of his life is gone. It would be amazing if the spirit moved him and the glimpses of a solid player that we saw early on in his tenure at Austin FC, I would love it if we saw that return. There is very much nothing but possibilities. And I had some rando accuse me of toxic positivity, which I'm sorry, but just base level optimism and the belief that hope can still rise in the world, and not giving in to the politics of pessimism and bury the team out back, sell the team to a sovereign wealth fund. I'm sorry, but I am never going to wholesale until the players say, screw the fans, screw the press, screw everybody, and the entire city of Austin, we give up on them. I'm not going to give up on the opportunity for them to turn things around or defy expectations, because the greatest highlights of the Austin FC story so far has been them defying expectations and things not coming to them easy. The cheat codes are not enabled by default like they were for LAFC, like they have been for Inter Miami, like they have been for other clubs across the league, where, well, sometimes Austin FC is just going to get paddled, is the way that I feel the league has set up various unfair advantages for other clubs. But time after time, the resilient optimism of Austin FC refusing to lay down in the fight and keep getting up and keep going is something that is why I'm not done with this team yet.
Okay. And speaking of the second team, because you mentioned the second team to close us out here today, how are they doing?
Well, Phil, they have officially broken an MLS Next Pro record. And let me get on a soapbox here for a second. And people are not going to like what I'm about to say. Phil?
Yes.
These independent local soccer journalists, can I just say, what the hell are these people on? What is wrong with these people? There's a third division developmental league team that is cruising for a second star over their crest, that is mathematically setting themselves up to not just host home playoff matches, but mathematically be set up to host a final at Q2 Stadium in theory.
Okay.
Where's the local independent soccer press reporting on this incredible story? This turnaround after bringing up the U16 Academy coach, who, when said local independent soccer journalists go to interview him after a match, reads as having the very clear disposition of being kind of shocked that journalists are covering a third division developmental soccer league team and give a crap about interviewing the coach of what a lot of people consider the Academy Plus without ads of a soccer team. I joke, of course, but MLS Next Pro, the previous record was 8 consecutive wins. Austin FC 2 broke that last week with 9 consecutive wins. And after a hard-fought battle against Colorado Rapids 2, who I refer to as CO2, you don't want to leave them inside for too long or you could poison yourself. A hard-fought 3-2 win. They've now extended that record to 10 consecutive wins. And in a week's time, it could be 11. The thing that I have beat the drum on is that especially if people have small kids, if people have issues with either the cost or the sensory overload of going to games at Q2, Palmer Field is the best $12 ticket in American soccer. It is the reason that I saw the development arc of CJ Fodre before he became the guy who kept Austin FC in the Open Cup fight last season, saw Irvin Torres develop into the really solid talent that he is. There are interesting things happening despite the adversity, despite the rough waters that folks have seen very up and down for the first team's fortunes over the last couple seasons. And I think it's a good time to hop on the bandwagon. You know, if maybe you're a little bit burned out by the first team and you need them to earn your trust again, go see the second team play.
Also, the second team is actually playing right now, right? So
yeah, they're playing through the World Cup break and have been, and go be their surrogate uncles and aunties and cheer them on. It's a good vibe. It's more laid back. It's lower pressure, a little bit lower stakes in terms of arming yourself for battle the way that I think people do when we're going to go be one of the 19,738, no more, no less. It's always exactly that number at Q2 Stadium. 20,738. Phil, thank you for correcting me. I'm going to get ejected from the Army with a dishonorable discharge.
They are playing the Toonies here on Sunday night at 7:30 p.m., it looks like.
Oh,
at Palmer Field.
Phil. The Toonies. Oh, man. That's going to be a hell of a match. I wouldn't miss that. I wouldn't miss that. I would ignore the Tiger Woods golf thing next door to it and bring a secret sandwich and have a great time.
Okay. Anything else we need to hit here? So on this recording, which again, we have recorded this Tuesday morning. This should be up in your feed, as you will see Tuesday evening, once I have a chance to edit this on the other side of my work day.
No, I think that's just about it. The one other thing I was going to mention about Dani is that there was a little fan supporter group goodbye for him on the morning of July 4th. And the artist who did the panel of that vignette tifo that featured all the players who did his brought it back down from Dallas. And everybody who showed up, who had painted on it, worked on it, or just loved Dani, signed it to him and gifted it to him and his family. And I think it's a really beautiful gesture that the fans put together. And that tifo in particular, one of the things that I learned going to a closed to the public but open to the press practice earlier this season is that there's a framed poster-size print of that tifo being raised that is right at the entryway to their dining room at St. David's Performance Center, and they see that every day. I'm not going to criticize the club's marketing department, the way that defrocked former colleagues of ours have taken to of late, but that's the kind of thing that I wish people had known about sooner, because I think that relationship with the fans that Dani was very instrumental in fostering, that Brad Stuver was instrumental in fostering, that's a really a special part of what this community and this club is like. No, that's all I got, Phil, unless you have anything.
Yeah, let's cut and print. And go France, go Morocco.
Allez les Bleus, or Allez Maroc. Either way, it's French.
This is the best thing I've heard in the history of the 8 years I've been on this planet.